I'm actually doing this with a lot of people who are coming in here. I see either I know them personally or we're friends, or I've seen them publicly share, either in writings or videos or talking about their work. And there's a resonance to me, which is really powerful right now, that it just speaks to me. And this piece around straddling both the corporate world, and I think those are my people who are exiting the corporate world or of a certain way of being, and not leaving it completely, but certainly pivoting it into what works for them in a totally new way of being. And so I think I want to start with what you shared earlier around how you got here, which is you were in a 9-to-5. What were you doing in the corporate world?
My corporate job, I actually worked for a skateboard distributor. So I was slinging skateboards worldwide, actually for Baker. So Baker Skateboards, Baker Boys Distribution. When I was in my 20s, I had a retail store. So that's kind of how I got into skateboard and snowboarding. And then in my late 30s, early 40s is when I went in-house and worked a corporate job. And it was funny because I remember my brother-in-law was like, "You're the most interesting corporate exec I've ever seen because you wear cutoff shorts and flip-flops to work." But, I was chief of operations and like climbed that illustrious corporate ladder to get to the executive suite.
Health and benefits.
Yeah. And that's what we're sold on to go for.
And then what happened?
Long story short, I think, I had invested a lot of time into my career. It was like, what do I need to do to sharpen my sword to become an executive? So I got my Executive MBA and trained and developed myself so that I could lead a company. And then when I did, it just got into this situation where I got a promotion to chief of operations, but it was in title only, so not in pay. And I was like, yeah, I did not just invest $125,000 of my own money in 20 months of my life to get lateral pay. Actually, it was like slightly less than I was making in sales. But I think the bigger thing for me was, as a mother, not wanting to choose between my kids and career. And there's so many ways you can do corporate, but the way I was doing it is I was wanting to prove my devotion and dedication always. And so I was that mom who was sneaking in texts during bath time or, writing some emails quickly on the weekend. So I wasn't a very present mom. And when my older son, Logan, was 7, I'll never forget, like, literally the intersection we were at in the car, and I look in the rearview mirror and he says, "I would rather be homeless living on the street with you if I actually could be with you." And that was like this this core shaking moment of realizing I am climbing the corporate ladder and I'm living this life as this 6-figure executive and doing all this stuff to provide for my son. And yet what he needs most, my time, my presence, my attention, he's not experiencing having it. So when I had my second son, I just kind of realized my kids are my priority. I've wanted to be a mother my whole life. And here I am allowing success to look like 6-figure job, this title, working for a cool company, and like what other people thought was so important. But when it really came down to family and what I valued, I needed to leave.
I think that's like the main theme of everyone that I'm talking to / out in the world and on this thing is just, what will people think? And these buckets that we've created, these fake buckets around job title and even the company and the amount of money that we make and the house and the car and all the things. And I feel like more people than ever now are getting to this place where they realize, like, wait, this is all a lie. This isn't the dream that we were sold. And I think there's a question mark around, well, how do we, if this is what we've all been taught we need, how do we exit that? And so that's what I'm seeing in your work, is like you're actually helping people exit this lie of how we're supposed to live and how we're supposed to. How did you navigate that yourself?
I think every evolution, whether it's leaving 9-to-5 to become a consultant or leave my consultancy to become a coach, or like now redefine how my coaching business model works, every evolution is so sticky because you have to let go of she who got you here And I remember when I was in corporate, one of the biggest, hardest parts for me is I thought of like, I felt so bad for the people who helped me get to where I got. You know, like the people who hired me and trusted me, and like I got all these promotions, like the people who were in my corner so that I could have all this success. And then I get to the top of the mountain, supposedly, and I'm like, yeah, I changed my mind. And so like the guilt of the people who helped me, and then also the guilt of leaving a team, you know, feeling like, what are they going to do? But, you know, I had to, at that time, really look at the balance of, yeah, but what about like my family? And I think, you know, one of the things I've been talking about most recently is like the loyalty leash, because we have so many loyalties to the people in our life who helped us, the team. You know, even I felt guilty at times because I was like, most people look at my life and think, I'd do anything to be in your shoes. She has it. She's making 6 figures. She's the chief of operations. She's in the executive suite. She's the boss. She's driving the car. She's married to the guy. And yet I didn't want it. And I think there's this point where sometimes you think, am I asking for too much? Am I being greedy? Am I, you know, like there's this balance of being content and then still wanting to also up level and grow and develop yourself. And sometimes it's a stretchy moment when you're in that in between.
How do you, because I think I love that topic, because I catch myself in, I feel like so much of my journey has been to find peace and acceptance with what I have today. And at the same time, there's, you know, this drive of where I want to go. And so finding that stretch between, how do you navigate that distance of this is where I am and this is where I'm relaxed? And then how do you hold that? Because I often find a lot of the language sometimes is like when we're stretching for more, I don't want to be in that place of I want more because I don't have. So I'm curious how you navigate that, especially with yourself and with clients. And
yeah, so the way I was doing it was I was seeing some kind of milestone or accomplishment, like, oh, even early on, you know, like straight A's, and then like getting into this school, and then, you know, getting this 6 figures, that's going to be it. Oh no, the executive suite, that's going to be it. Like thinking that all of these external things are going to finally have me be fulfilled. I'm definitely someone who my whole life, I felt like I was seeking and searching. I was like, I'm looking for something, like, what is it? And I kept thinking all of these accomplishments were going to do it. So I became almost addicted to being a high achiever. And I think for me, more like how I'm navigating it currently is really from a place of sovereignty of what does success look like for me? And what do I want my life to look like? And I think the biggest thing is just like kind of letting go of the timeline. But I understand, you know, it's like there's the you today that you have to honor, and then the you of tomorrow. And I think that when we are centered with ourselves and in our sovereignty, you know if this next part of the path that you're taking is because it's part of your true path versus another box to check. I mean, that feeling of checking a box and you're like, I thought that was going to be it. It's still not it. Fuck. Okay, now what? And then you can't even revel in it. You know, it's like, oh, check. Okay, done. Now what's next? What else can I do? And like that tendency to want to crush and like do more.
I feel like that's just like this disease of more that we all have, which is like more to consume, more to buy, more to have, more to money. And there's this chaos. It's insane. Like we live in this society which has become insane, and in many respects, and beautiful in other ways. You talk about this idea of sovereignty and how that, you know, you define that for yourself. What does that look like for you today compared to how it used to?
Well, I've never had sovereignty previously. So I always was really big into freedom. Even have had a whole business built off freedom from the 9 to 5. And I do believe in that. You know, freedom from the 9 to 5 is really important. If we stay in a 9 to 5 where we're working 40, 50, 60 hours, and then you're totally tapped, mentally drained, energetically depleted, how can you ever really do your life's work? It's hard to do. So for me, it was like, how do we get more people freedom from the 9 to 5? You know, I've worked with over 450 people, And they're able to typically replace their corporate income and work like half the time once they like understand their value and flip everything into consultancy or fractional work. But what I was noticing is many of my clients and myself, even though we were free from the 9 to 5, we were still grinding in our own business, still having that mechanism of needing to do more or prove, or, you have to work hard to have it worth it. And that's when I started realizing, freedom means I can do whatever I want. Sovereignty is like, I know what's mine to do.
Ooh.
They're really different. They're like very close, but the nuance of it, sovereignty comes from an internal place. Freedom is still more of an external.
For show of like, I can do, yeah, okay, I get that. Wow. And then from that place of sovereignty, like how do clients shift from that place? Where do you see, people moving? How do you know someone's moving from a place of freedom versus sovereignty?
Sovereignty, you actually give you, like, freedom means like, oh, I can do all these things, but you still don't give yourself permission. Like, you could work wherever. You could go to Hawaii and work, but you don't. You could take Thursdays and Fridays off, but you never do. Sovereignty is knowing like, this is really what's important to me. This is what I value. This is what success looks like on my own internal metric system. Because looking at like all the check boxes that other people think is great, that's just still external sourcing. And I have found for myself, so I'm going to be 52 in a few months.
Congrats.
Yay! And for my entire life, I never could quite feel fulfillment or peace. I'd have it for really fleeting moments. And I'm pretty clear right now, stepping into, myself as a sovereign woman, that feeling that I have now, like I've never been more calm, relaxed, peaceful, and feeling content and fulfilled that I've been in my life. Like, I'm clear that this isn't a momentary thing. Like, it will continue to deepen. And some of my friends are like, I don't know what's going on with you, but like you've always been pretty chill, but you are at a whole nother level of zen. And it's because I'm defining my life. And it's not perfect. I have a nervous system and an environment that's still set up for 50 plus years of this old way. So for me, though, sovereignty is like an infinite game, right? The infinite games are those ones that we play them for the sake of playing them, and there is no end. They just keep going, versus like a finite game has a beginning and an end, and the players, and there's like a box to check. The infinite games are like, for the love of it, meditation, wellness,
joy.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I think to answer your question, when you're in a place of sovereignty, you'll feel love, you'll feel joy, you'll feel abundance, and they're not dictated by an external circumstance. It's all, and you're like internally sourced.
I think one of the, from the external place though, I think if I look at like where the world is run on money, and I think I've been through my own journey of where is my source of that coming from? For me, that's now higher power, spirit, whatever word you want to put on that, which is infinite. And I feel like a lot of people who start to get curious about, oh, wow, we can do work that's, makes us feel fulfilled and filled with passion. I feel like the biggest block for so many people, I don't want to say so concrete, but is the fear around money. And I'm curious how, you navigated that place of, a lot of the methods in stepping into that place of sovereignty feel insane. They go against everything that we've been told is how things are supposed to work out. And I think there's also there's the whole feminine conversation as well, which, nervous system capacity, relaxing and receiving, and I haven't gone into this side of the woo too much on here yet, but it's fascinating to me. It's like how building from a relaxed feminine place is actually much more abundant than anything that we've been told.
Yeah, I have so much to say. I definitely come from more masculine energy, driven, discipline, focus. Like that is where I'm home. And for me, I didn't even know what feminine energy was like a year and a half ago. I mean, when I thought of feminine, I thought of like feminine wiles, and I thought about you're indecisive, you're manipulative, you're overly emotional. And I had no idea that there was a difference between wounded feminine energy, which is what I just said, indecisive, overly emotional, dramatic, dependent, versus like a divine feminine energy is very creative, very intuitive, very connected. And I didn't even understand those distinctions. And the same goes for like masculine, divine masculine energy is like, holding the space and being in integrity, whereas like wounded is controlling and aggressive. But it's interesting how in our culture, we mostly define masculine and feminine in the wounded ways versus the divine ways. And when I started really tapping in, when I went to Egypt last year is when I really started opening up to my divine feminine and my intuition and my flow. But it has to be integrated.
Yeah.
You need to have like structures and frameworks so that you can flow and feel grounded at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, I feel, especially being in LA, Venice, and this was my own journey. So I speak at it from like I
said
peace out to the corporate world like 6 years ago. I never want to come back because that's so fucked. And for a couple of years, I was like a hippie on the road doing out there, lots of psychedelics, and thought I was connecting to something big. It was like blasting my mind open in terms of even just the way I was earning money. Was I had done great school, great job, done everything I was supposed to, and then I kind of wanted to say no to the money system because it was so dark and distorted. And I remember I was like in Idaho and I was staying on one of these workaway farms, and some guy said, "Hey, you can paint this building for 3 hours and then you get room and board, food and board." And it was just like blowing my mind of like, wait, I could do something that wasn't behind a screen and earn some money and then have my needs taken care of.
Bartering.
Bartering. Yeah. It opened my perspective of like, it was minuscule money, but it's just like, wow, the value exchange wasn't what we were told. And, so I think what I see a lot of people who start going down this journey of exploration and life and higher purpose, it's forgetting the masculine, the systems and the structure piece. And I had to forget it for a couple of years until I was like, well, I can't land any money. Like, where's the money? Where's the rent? All that stuff. And so I had initially challenge around these like masculine, feminine principles because they sound so woo and like, what do you mean? Like, I'm in a job, I'm building a business. How is that relatable? But I think the people who do hold both, which is what I'm seeing in you, is you have systems and structures in place. That's the container where you can then have the massive expansion and the growth between. What was the biggest blow your mind experience around, shifting out of, I have to do things this perfectionism idea of having to do things a certain way, and into a place of things coming much more intuitively?
That's such a great question. The universe sat my ass down. Okay. To tell you the truth, it's like I was definitely resisting it, but I in 2023 and 2024 really focused on Out to Launch Academy, which is a program that I've had to help individuals leave corporate and become consultants and coaches. And just that one program was like a multi-million-dollar annual cash in the bank program. And about a year ago, my business as I knew it, everything worked like literally like clockwork. And then it just started to like fall apart. And it's wild. I mean, I have sat with so many people to understand like what happened, what changed. Like, the ads were the same. Everything was the same and consistent and had a very consistent result. But I had this big shift when I went to Egypt. And I came back and my, everything that wasn't aligned, it was as if there was a light shining on it. And I got really sick. I got pneumonia and I couldn't shake it. And I got like this weird, rare pneumonia that 50% of people who get it die.
Oh shit.
And to be really radically transparent, 2 years prior to the same month, my beautiful, absolutely healthy sister died randomly of pneumonia. So here I've lost my sister. And, if you've looked at Louise Hay, where we look at sometimes when we have health issues, there's like underlying energetic principles. And when I looked at what pneumonia is the cause of, it's like tired of living and grief. And I started to just like realize like we're trying to be so perfect in every moment, and everyone's just like comparing each other to each other's highlight reel. It's all a bunch of fake bullshit, and we're like jumping through these endless hoops, driving ourselves crazy, and it's literally costing some of us. I mean, it costs us our peace, our vitality, our sanity. It makes us insomniacs at night, and some of us actually, unfortunately, like my sister, don't even make it through, It's like I had a beautiful client, and her need for perfectionism and being a high achiever, she had like a seizure and missed her daughter's wedding. It's like, what are we doing? And so I I got so sick, and I think, it was like, I was like, I need to start really reevaluating what I'm doing. And, I was sick almost for the better part of 4 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a wake-up call.
Yeah. And yeah.
It's funny, the physical side of stuff, when that comes through now, I'm such a big believer that whatever's going on in our body is for us to listen to. And so if I look at where I was 6 years ago, which was depressed, and, my friend Tom was having panic attacks and episodes, and I have so many friends who have panic attacks and call that anxiety.
It's rampant.
It's everywhere.
It's our new normal.
Yeah. When it's not normal.
And it's totally stressed and anxious is normal.
Here's a prescription pill. That will solve it. Yeah.
Totally.
I'm going to ask you to maybe move your hair off the mic just in case on that side. Thank you. Or you can put it on the other side. Oh, that's gorgeous either way. But this idea that our body is speaking to us, and we've been so cut off from...
Disconnected.
Especially in like this, as if I look at as where I was 6 years ago, I used to wear an Oxford shirt and black jeans and like boots, and this whole, hi, I'm going to pitch some business and go meet clients, and be this whole persona of like me, so I can get business, and so then I can be something, I can prove myself to my company, or whatever the thing is. So disconnected from the feminine aspects of, but all the aspects of who I am. But my body was screaming at me. And I feel like so many people I speak to who've had these like life-altering moments and changing their lives and going off in their, actually, this is what I want to be doing, or this is the thing I need to change. So much of it has come from a physical wake-up call, like you just described.
Yeah, I'm a parent, but we've all been around kids, and we've all been kids, right? And the beauty of kids is kids are whole, perfect, and complete. They know it. They just emanate it. And their mind, body, and soul are completely connected. And then when we're at like one of our most vibrant, juiciest moments in life, around 6 years old, we're funneled into this education system, and not knocking any teachers, but the system as it is. It's like, we're then taught that we need to know the answer. And we go through this culture and like indoctrination system and culturation of needing to know the answer. And so we get really heady. And we think that all of the answers are here. And it's like, no, when we reconnect our head with our heart, that's where all, like, the two most pivotal moments of my life, my body was an absolute fuck yes. Like every cell in my body was like, we're going this way. And my logical brain was like, what the fuck do you think you're doing? Like it was a big, they were definitely on polar ends. And the first time my body walked me into my future mother-in-law's holiday party. And I met my future husband.
Oh, so you hadn't met him there?
No.
Oh, wow.
It was just like a full body, my brain was like, you don't want to go to a Christmas party with a bunch of strangers. That would be horrible. You're an introvert. This is a bad idea. But there was something in my heart that was like, just go, like a whisper, like just see what happens. And my brain's like, why do you want to see what happens? This is going to be a bad thing. And I just went and I met my future husband. And then the second one was answering the call to go to Egypt, where every part of my being was like, go. And then my brain was like, that's really far. That sounds expensive. That's a long time. That's near the Gaza Strip. Like it seemed not like the smartest idea, but I had to trust my intuition. And, if we all trusted our intuition more, we would have like radically vibrant lives. And that's what it's about, right? It's returning yourself to you.
How do you navigate that, listening to your intuition and then, I guess, being insane?
Well, I think that you actually know.
Yeah.
I think that you do. And it's like, in the beginning, it's like anything else. It's like a muscle that gets stronger and stronger.
I think there's one of the things that came about for me in the last few years, when through a lot of pain and grief, is I started, and I cringe when I say this word, but I started channeling. I started receiving information, like in a way that was like blew my head out. And I would do tarot readings for people, and it was just like, I wasn't even using the cards, but it was just like a doorway opened for me. And then I got really clear of like, I want to help people with businesses doing this. And so I've since started working with a few business leaders who are so curious about, what does the other side say about learning this, gift, which I think we all have. What I can tap into, which is just a sense of, channel from source, which is interpreted in so many ways. We all have. And so this idea of, I love what you just said around not needing to know, because whether you're building a business or you're consulting for yourself, like I find I think this idea of if you work for someone else, you're, in my head, like a loser. I need to retract on that. But there is an idea of like, how do we create autonomous systems for ourselves? Maybe that is working for a company part-time. Maybe that's just fully running your own business. This idea of we need to have it all figured out. There is actually an infinite channel that is guiding you. And I'm assuming that's how you've been following this transition and building this business and kind of where you're at in life, which you could never have figured out from the beginning.
No, I mean, we learned it all in high school, the scientific method. It's like you have a hypothesis, this is what I think, and then you just go freaking find out. It's like bringing back that curiosity and that wonder and that play. Knowing in your head doesn't usually feel expansive. It feels good because but it doesn't have that like energy that just like, let's just go find out. And it doesn't even matter if you find out that it didn't work.
Of the 450 people that you've worked with, houses for data, of those people who did that, who followed that sense of feeling.
It's funny. I have this incredible client. Her name's Rita, and she moves so quickly. And she's like, I just did the coaching. Like, even when you say something and I'm like, that feels uncomfortable, I just go do it. Like, it's just a test. It's just an experiment. And I see that the people, like I have people who have started working with me and in 1 month, they're making $20,000 a month, like on a retainer. I have a client who worked with me in their first year, they make $300,000. That's crazy for your first year of business. And then, straight. I have clients who never do get those results because they literally sit in paralysis analysis of like, well, what if I do this offer and then I do this offer and I talk to that person and then that person says this and I'm like, why don't you just get on the court and play? And when you actually have something for me to coach you on, right? Versus it's very easy for us if we need to know everything. You're going through this like hypothetical 12 steps and it's like, what are we talking about? Because life is out here. It's not here. It's out here.
And how do you think people make? Do you think this idea of sovereignty and that level of abundance and that level of good income streams, do you think that's available for anyone?
I think that I do think it's available for anyone, because I really do believe that sovereignty comes from like within, right? I mean, you can feel moments of enlightenment cleaning a toilet bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, I have some of my most zen moments unloading the dishwasher when I'm just like being in the moment. But as far as like levels of income, I think that, the people that I work with, they have some kind of skill like marketing or AI. If someone is a construction worker and they manually do something, I don't know how that would translate necessarily to consulting. Because like the people that I've worked with are consultants, fractional workers, and coaches. So that's like who I can speak to in data points. But as far as like having joy and feeling abundance, I don't think it's only these people get it.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fractional piece is so interesting to me because my most steady client over the last few years is they're actually a fractional consulting firm. They do fractional marketing and fractional finance for all these e-commerce brands. They were saying that all the clients that they work with, the brands, they're not going anywhere because from their side of perspective, they'd much rather hire a fractional person who has the expertise, saves them money rather than bringing on someone full time. And they're just seeing like their proof of the last 3-4 years is that brands want to work with fractional people.
Oh yeah.
And so I see that now as like the biggest blowing up thing on LinkedIn and the way that people position themselves in the market, myself included, is everyone's fractional.
Yeah. I mean, when the pandemic hit in 2020 and I was like, I can't wait. This is like my dream come true, because there's nothing that says that we're going to be our most potent and creative Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. That's a made-up construct. And the beauty about having a fractional employee or a fractional team member, they're not employees, is that when you're fractional, you totally have your own dominion of when and how you work.
Yeah.
And that sovereignty allows you to work at your peak times, like when you're inspired and innovative versus something that's prescribed by somebody else. I mean, obviously for companies, it's also going to be cheaper, right? Because you don't have all the benefits, stuff that you're paying on the other side. And I know that some people are like, that means that being a fractional is not great. And I'm like, absolutely. It's amazing because you can get all the write-offs and perks of being a business owner. But, any of us who have done a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, know how much time we waste pretending to work. It's not productive.
I also find like the safety net around, I mean, there's so many people getting laid off. I think the economy is obviously, I say interesting. It's interesting. On the one hand, I'm seeing so much like being decimated. And on the other hand, I'm working with businesses and seeing so many clients that are just like blowing up because it's this whole, I mean, we could go super woo, age of Aquarius, power of the people. And I think that is the mode right now.
Energy is everything.
It's everything.
It really is.
And that's the shift, is like we're done with this idea of power in the hands of the few at the top and being controlled by our hours and slog through, and then you get the bonus and the job title. And so the idea of sovereignty and being empowered with all aspects of your life, I think is such a theme that just keeps getting louder and louder. I'm seeing it everywhere. Can't remember where I was going with that point, and that's okay. I'll come back around. But people are, this idea of everybody's getting laid off. I think there's this. I either see people who are building in the fractional space, but there's a huge wave of people behind like, but how do we do this? And it's like navigating that place out of fear. And for me, if I get laid off by one company and that's my entire income, overnight, I'm straight into survival. And so for me, the safety net from a fractional perspective is having multiple income streams. That to me is like the most like logical, because if one client ends for whatever reason, I have 2 or 3 others. I'd like to have 2 or 3 others. I've got 1 other at the moment. But in terms of how people think about the fractional piece, why does it work for people? Is it just the timing or just the sovereignty? Like where is the Where is people's mindset shift around why into fractional?
I mean, fractional works if you have the mindset for it. There's going to be people who are like, but if I'm a fractional, then I got to go find a client. Yeah, you're going to have to do that. You know, like the part about being an employee is that the systems are built for you. You plug in, right? The thing about being a fractional, which is being a business owner, is you've got to create the system to some extent. I mean, even, you know, for me, the clients that work with me, they're basically copy and pasting my system, but they still got to do it. So I think that you have to be willing to be fully, like, take full radical ownership if you're going to be a fractional or a business owner. It doesn't have that same, I mean, I'm not saying that people who are employees aren't fully responsible, but there's differences there. You know, you were saying something earlier and it just like dropped back in for me. There are people who work in companies and they don't act like a cog in the wheel. They're entrepreneurs, which an entrepreneur has like the mindset and they think like an entrepreneur in the format of corporate or working for someone else. And those are the people, like, how did I get 3 promotions in 3 years when I was at Baker Boys? Well, because I felt like an entrepreneur and I wasn't like just showing up to try to do the least I could to get by. I had my retail experience with my own business, so I was already thinking like an entrepreneur and then plug that in. So there's no one right way. There's so many paths.
You touched on the energy is everything, and then before this, you said your audience is the woo curious. What was your exploration with the woo?
I woo
Big question.
Yeah. So, when I was a kid, I was very spiritually attuned. Like when I was a kid, I can remember wanting to see a certain animal, and then like the animal would appear. And then I kind of lost it, teenage. Then I was like partying in my 20s. I was still partying in my 30s. And then, I think that I kind of really was very disconnected. Then I became a mom. I mean, there's like nothing that's going to make you believe in something bigger and higher than like birthing another human. But for me in 2021, I was literally just in the doom scroll. And I saw this creator. He's amazing, John Hillstead.
Love him.
Yeah.
So great.
Yeah. So listen to this story. So I see John and I was like, he was really talking about manifestation and about spirituality. He's so funny. So I literally watched him for like an hour the first time I saw him. So of course the algorithm keeps serving him to me. And I was like, so like, when's he gonna come up with another video? And he was really the first messenger that I could hear, because I had this perception that people who are spiritual were weird and flaky and unreliable and not data oriented and just like, I don't know, cringy in every kind of a way. But I could hear John's messaging. And one day, as a gift to myself, I bought a one-on-one session with him. And it was incredible. And we really connected. And at the time, he was living in LA. And then like I became his business coach. And we, and at the same time, one of my first clients in Out to Launch Academy, her name is Chardy, Magic Woman. She came in and she was like, I'm a psychotherapist and a hypnotherapist, and I want to build a coaching practice. And I was like, great, what are we building? And she's like, I want to be a shamanic healer. And so kind of working with the two of them independently and separately exposed me to spirituality, but like from people that I could hear.
I love, you just touched upon the messenger.
Yeah, the messenger's important.
Because we get, like, that's kind of the vehicle for this. Well, we'll see. But I too kind of thought that this woo-woo world was like weird and mystical, didn't really relate to it. And when I needed it, I didn't really know. I was like, my entry point was like, there was this guy that I was totally obsessed with, thought it was my twin flame. So I get all like the twin flame content on Instagram and on YouTube, and I'm inhaling it like there's no tomorrow. Eventually leads me to a breaking point of like, ew, yeah, this isn't this isn't so cool. But it got my attention. And, you know, lots of other things and mystical experience from there. But I think there's this, throughout that whole time, I was talking to my sister, for example. She lives in London with her husband. She runs a florist business. And I know that I sounded insane to her.
Yeah.
And she is now on a journey herself. And we went to Glastonbury last year, and it was like the Mary Magdalene cave. We didn't really have a close relationship growing up, but I took that together because she was like, can we go somewhere super woo? I was like, let's go Glastonbury. My side note, my insane vision is to headline Glastonbury Festival one day.
Oh.
Which I'm like,
let's do it.
Yeah, sure, exactly. So I've been following that breadcrumb.
Let's reverse engineer how that would happen.
It's kind of, yeah, I'll come back to that. But with my sister, she can now hear it. And so I think where I get to around the messenger place is that we're all each other's messengers. It's not some just angel like hitting us through the sky, but it could be the man in the grocery store, or it could be the John Hillstead I see online. I think there's this like really mystical thing where you start playing, where suddenly everybody's each other's messenger. In whatever, if we are willing to allow that, like your email showing up in my inbox, I'm like, oh yeah, this is exactly the topic that I want to talk about. And I love what you did with John, which is reaching out. Like everybody's accessible to some degree, you know?
You'd be surprised how accessible people are.
Who's the most surprising?
Like just, there's been so many people that you're like, oh, like they would never, how would I ever get in touch with them? It's like, well, instead of trying to know the answer, just experiment and try. You know, like I never dreamed that I was going to do a one-on-one with John and that it was going to turn into, you know, this amazing friendship.
Yeah.
But people are, you know, it's just like reaching out. But you know, something that you're saying about like kind of feeling a little bit like of a contraction around you having this awakening and then like sharing it with your sister. And it's so interesting because like I've had that same thing where you're like, oh, I'm spiritually awakening and how's this going to land with my humans around me? But the same thing happens when you're leaving 9 to 5, where you feel like I see something as possible for me, actually for us even. But then you're like, I don't want to rock the boat and like piss people off and have all these uncomfortable conversations potentially.
God forbid uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, I mean, you know, leaving 9 to 5 and having those uncomfortable conversations was very hard. And then becoming like me, just actually landing with, I am a high priestess, you know, and myself a year ago would have been like, absolutely. I mean, I even asked my husband, I was like, there's oracles, there's shamans, there's medicine women, there's high priestesses. And he's like, yeah, what's your point? And I was like, well, if you were introducing, you know, my wife is an oracle, my wife is a medicine woman. I was like, which is the worst? And he was like, high priestess, by far. And I was like,
why?
Yeah, I know, right?
Why is that the worst?
And for me, I feel the same way. I think it's because, you know, we both have wounding around church and Christianity and like priestess. And so for me, part of what created so much suffering of my own doing in my last evolution is just actually is getting like, no, this is your soul code. This is your path.
Yeah. There's such a, I mean, you touched about this with Egypt, and there's such like a mystical layer, like a matrix, you know, whatever language you want to describe. But we're living in these worlds, making money and wearing nice clothes sometimes, unless you spill oil all over them today, which I did. You know, there's a real tangible world. And then it feels like this subtext of such deeply mystical and magical experiences that I've had. It sounds like, you know, you were on that we've all had. We're like the people in my life and world, we're having these deeply mystical experiences which have transcended lifetimes. And yes, on the one hand, you could say, well, you smoked too much crack and go back to where you came from. But on the other hand, there's, you know, what you touched upon earlier, which is this knowing. It runs so deep of, you know, when I hit my rock bottom, side note, so I play guitar, like as a kid, it was like my escape, but didn't really sing for anyone. But I played Tom, my friend, a song before he died. And so when he did pass, I was like, oh shit, I have to play the song at his memorial. And that was the first time I sang in front of anyone. And it set me off on this, like, Q a few months later was abusing drugs, but I saw myself in my mirror at home in front of hundreds of thousands of people on stage. And
Were
I'm
you
like,
at Glastonbury?
yeah. And I was like, oh, it's Glastonbury.
And that's a timeline for you.
It's a timeline. In my head, this sounds so, I'll say it out loud, 2027, 2028. And 5 years ago, like, I hadn't written any songs. I hadn't put any music out there. And yet it's like this branch that is calling me of like, yes, that's your journey. That could be in this lifetime. It could be in another. So I'm kind of having a relaxed attachment to it. But for me, it was, what's the point of having a platform and putting yourself on stage unless you can use it for good? And for like the idea of like going from desk job a few years ago to Glastonbury is so wild. And yet this mystical environment and journey that I've experienced along the way, and have met so many other people who have also left this 9-to-5 life and are going on their own mystical journey. It's like, yes, that's possible.
It's like, you wouldn't believe the wild things, like when you're just open to them.
Yeah.
I remember once seeing on TikTok, I think it was in 2022, I saw someone who was in Times Square. And she was like, because she was, pointing to her ad in Times Square. And I remember looking at it going, that's so fucking cool. Like, what would be, I don't know what the use case would be, but I want that. And literally 2 weeks later, Monday.com reached out to me and was like, we're doing this campaign and we want to feature you in Times Square. And I was like, wait, what?
Yes.
And there's, it's just like allowing yourself to believe. And then, more importantly, it's not about just like manifesting. It's about taking the aligned action that puts you on that timeline. It's funny how cliches, the reason why they're cliches is because we hear them all the time. And the reason why we hear them all the time is because they're true.
Yeah.
And what is it that they say? Like, if you can conceive it, you can achieve it. Like, why would you be given the ability to dream something if it can't actually come to fruition?
I love this idea of just like, our desires are holy. What's the most outrageous idea that I have or desire is to headline Glastonbury. That in my head, yeah. And then I after that vision, then I started to understand the blueprint. It's the throat chakra of the world, or the heart chakra, depending on which way you're looking at it. But it's like, it's a center point of like deep energetics. And the UK, amongst many other places, so repressed in terms of the feminine, so just like, you shall not have a voice. I'm like, oh yeah, I was in a desk job in London, miserable, send you out to LA. And then, but yeah, this idea of, and those desires, which are so outrageous and on some level are so inconceivable, they are given to us to be brought to fruition. And my vision is like, what if everybody in the world was literally following their most outrageous, unlimited desire or dream for themselves? Like, that world would be pretty. Like,
yeah, the world will radically change.
Like overnight. What's the most outrageous idea or desire that you have?
I'm like, wow, this is going to be publicly released. Okay.
I know, that's why I was like,
fun. No, it's actually fun. Well, I guess like, I could probably think of something, but the one that like popped up for me, so I'll share that one is, and I don't even know if I have my facts straight, but I kind of remember when My Big Fat Greek Wedding came out.
Yeah. Like,
didn't she like write the book and then their movie became part of it? And then wasn't she like in the movie or like something weird like that? Like, and then won an Oscar or something. Like, my wildest fantasy is that my story would actually be told and like made into a movie. And then I would like be somehow involved in it and like get to do all the Oscars and stuff with my husband. That would be like my wildest, I think more like fame thing. But, my wildest, most audacious dream, the one that if you were like, okay, seriously, you get to have one shot.
Next week, yeah.
I would love more than anything in the world to motherfucking shift and transform the public education system. I would love to make it so that we didn't have to torture ourselves for a couple of decades and then hopefully maybe awaken and return to ourselves, but actually have an education system that nourished and nurtured who we are as children, so that we didn't have to go find ourselves because we've never lost ourselves. That would be, the Oscars would be great, but I would rather transform the education system. That'd be like my big, audacious, what is it called? A BHAG, your big, hairy, audacious goal.
Big, hairy, audacious goal.
That would be,
I love that.
A fuck hell yes, let's go do it.
It's so funny. There's one of my clients that I'm working with who I interviewed here. He's building I was so aversive to the idea that technology and that sort of stuff could help facilitate growth in a good way on this planet. And I believe he's building something which is capable of doing that. But we're speaking to a couple of governments around an education platform. So that's a different topic. Side note, but this idea that we were told that you have big, hairy ideas, audacious ideas, and you're wrong. I think that's the world that's crumbling right now. There's the people that I'm magnetically drawn to and are already inspired by myself are the ones who are like, yeah, why not? Why can't you be the one who revolutionizes or part of the people who revolutionize the education system? And to me, that's inspiring, And it doesn't need to look like a certain way. I love that.
Yeah. It's let's just tear down the matrix.